get that daily news. I ain't watching TV, I'ma log on to YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Talking about that raw, uncut news. You a fool. You believe in mainstream and local news. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. And 411, keep the 411. On a sensitive subject, keep it 100. Don't bite no tongue. If you cannot take the truth, then this is finna hurt. Who's to say if it's a round or a flat earth? Stick to the facts. What's some feelings? I don't do no capping. Read that paper, seen that news. Now you know what happened. Playing a pretty picnic. They control that weather. Same crisis actors, like we don't know no better. Thing about the truth always come to the light. Problem is too many. All bark, no bite. Like muscle, no might. I don't know what happened to them, but I know the way they said somebody ain't right. It's time to get that daily news. I ain't watching TV, I'ma log on to YouTube. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Talking about that raw, uncut news. You a fool. You believe in mainstream and local news. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe.
From families all over the county. This is unprecedented. They're dealing not only with water, with power, with no heat. What would you say to them right now?
I don't want to raise false hope and pretend that things are gonna get meaningfully better very soon.
So this could go on for days.
I believe it could, because they still haven't gotten additional generation online. Every hour that passes, things are getting worse.
All right, we're moving on from the Texas power outage to the Texas power outrage. Electricity supply, the orange line, and demand, the green line, has finally stabilized. But boy, wholesale prices for electricity in Texas got really nuts over the past several days. At one point, 1 megawatt went from $50 to about $9,000. Now, that doesn't affect you, the retail customer, as long as you're on a fixed rate plan, which most people are. But if you're on one of these variable or indexed plans, your rate and therefore your bill can shoot straight up. In fact, one woman messaged us and said, "Mine is over $1,000, not sure how. 700 square foot apartment. I've been keeping it 60 degrees. Another couple tweeted at us saying, using as little as possible, 1,300 square foot house, and this is my bill. I only paid $1,200 for the whole year in 2020. They're at $3,801 now. Then I spoke with a guy named Ty Williams. He has 3 different meters, one for his home, one for his guest house, one for his office. Last month combined, he spent $660. Now the totals for each one of these is more than $5,000 in this snapshot. At this point, his electric bill for this month is more than $17,000. What about that bill he owes to Griddy, though? What about all of those bills that so many Texans are going to be owing to their electric providers? We're talking about huge bills here. All of that is still going to have to be sorted out.
But they don't really need it in the winter except for an Arctic blast like this. So and there's no financial incentive to prepare for a winter that may never come. And so the way we have turned the electric grid into a competitive set of enterprises between generation and distribution, the generators have no financial incentive to prepare for this kind of issue. And so we suffer. I mean, there's millions of people. There's no internet. There's no electricity. It's a real problem. We're living in a third world situation.
14 million people, many of their homes flooded from burst pipes, have no clean water for drinking and cooking. Bottled water is being distributed, but residents of Houston and Austin and other cities are being told to boil water for up to 3 minutes. Some are melting snow and ice, and boiling it is not so easy if there's still no power. Survival expert Shane Hobel showed me how to use snow to make water that's safe to drink without power. Obviously, you're not going to be doing this in your living room.
Right.
Where is it safe to set a fire? In the driveway in your backyard?
As long as the canopy is clear, you're free from the neighbor's house, crosswinds, risk of, the ember jumping into flammable areas, other things. So just be mindful of where it is.
After it's boiled, this water still needs to be filtered.
Run it through a cheesecloth. You can run it through the coffee filters, the paper ones you have. You can run it through clean T-shirts, a bandana.
Not boiling water can have serious consequences, such as dysentery and hepatitis.
Water was gone at 8:30. Power was off. We're all obviously one of millions in the same boat as everybody in Houston. We're out in Katy, and it's cold, but we're trying to get through it with, as you can see, everybody is out and about.
Apartment now is getting freezing, even though all the doors, all the windows are closed, but it's frozen inside.
The line to fast food because nobody can eat because they don't have electricity, and they're afraid to open their refrigerator because they're spoiling all their groceries. So there's like 3 restaurants open in every city.
The recording says it's a rotation where they're supposed to be cutting off the power in every zip code for 15 to 30 minutes. But we've been out since 3 a.m. It'll flick back on about 3 to 5 minutes, and we run and try to warm up some coffee or warm up some food, and boom, it goes off.
Oh my God!
This morning, misery in Texas. Millions statewide spending another night in the dark without electricity, heat, and for a growing number, running water. Flooding homes, only adding to the nightmare. State officials offering little guidance on when any of it will be over.
Every source of power that the state of Texas has been compromised.
Lavelle Traylor and her father Lewis have spent the past 4 days inside a cold, dark home, using a single gas stove to stay warm.
I know God is here, but who else? We're supposed to take care of our people.
To the south in Houston and Galveston, millions being told to boil their water after outages impacted treatment plants.
Going to be in this for a couple of more days.
Emergency officials now fielding hundreds of calls related to carbon monoxide poisoning as people resort to desperate measures to stay warm.
Do not use grills indoors and do not run your car inside your garage.
And with limited water, even fire departments are struggling to battle blazes.
They're running from one call to the next, trying to do the best that they can.
The Lone Star State is alone in having its own power grid, allowing it to bypass federal regulations that would require safeguards for this exact type of cold weather. ERCOT, the nonprofit that operates the grid, admitting they are not able to compete with Mother Nature.
ERCOT saw the storm coming. The storm blew in. It also did damage to the supply side, and that knocked us enough out of balance that we had to take on these outages, as difficult and damaging as they have been.
The dangerous storms roaring across the country, leaving snow and bitter cold from Arkansas to Illinois. The Northeast now bracing for impact as folks in Texas do their best to survive.
It's really terrifying to think about people dying from these freezing conditions. And we don't want to be one of those statistics.
Tonight, long lines stretching for miles across Texas, millions struggling to find clean water, even as the power comes back online.
I don't have any water, that's why I'm here today.
With more than 14 million people being told to boil their water, mass distribution sites like this one opening up today. Houston resident Percy McGee, a diabetic, waiting in line since 6 o'clock this morning because supermarket shelves are empty.
I have no choice. All the stores in my area are out of water.
Our Trevor Alt in Houston.
All these cars have waited hours today to receive this bottled water. This is typically a mass vaccination site here in Houston. But today, the city's determined water is just more important.
The storm-related death toll growing. At least 60 people killed nationwide. In Harris County alone, 10 people dying from hypothermia.
Any of this was going to happen.
The lack of water also an issue for many hospitals. Memorial Hermann in Houston now trucking in water, and emergency calls are skyrocketing.
I've had dead people come in with higher temperatures than some of these patients.
With the power finally coming back and warmer temperatures in the forecast, residents returning home to utter devastation. We met Carlos Alonso trying to save whatever he could from his flooded garage.
You couldn't sleep because you were just thinking about your memories just being frozen in water.
Tonight, ERCOT, the agency that manages 90% of the state's power grid, under fire.
They said 5 days before the winter storm hit, ERCOT assured that, quote, "We are ready for the cold temperatures coming our way." I have ordered the state legislature to investigate.
But this is hardly the first time there have been questions. 10 years ago, a similar weather disaster, the brutal cold, then the power outages, and recommendations made back then to winterize the equipment. But many now asking, was anything actually done? Tonight, ERCOT defending its handling of the storm and vowing to investigate.
Texas can't afford for this to happen again.
President Biden tonight expected to sign a major disaster declaration for Texas, promising he will visit soon.
I had planned on being in Texas the middle of next week, but what I don't want to be is a burden.
A similar emergency unfolding in Jackson, Mississippi. An ice storm crippling the city's power and water systems. The mayor opening several water distribution sites, but many residents have no way to get there.
He did not address the people who cannot get there. The people are disabled and elderly who have no kind of support system, who have no way of transportation to get to these sites.
Resign Ted Cruz!
Back in Texas tonight, protesters calling for Senator Ted Cruz to resign after flying his family to Mexico in the middle of the crisis.
For him to fly to Mexico to get his family warm shows exactly how out of touch he is.
Text messages allegedly sent by Cruz's wife Heidi revealing the family invited friends to join them in Cancun and stay at the Ritz-Carlton because their house was, quote, freezing. After growing outrage and images of Cruz on the plane going viral, the senator now saying he regrets the decision.
I started having second thoughts really as I sat down on the plane.
This morning, the power is slowly turning back on in parts of Texas, but millions are facing yet another crisis. After extended mass power outages led to pipes bursting across the state. This morning, more than 13 million are being told to boil their water if they have any.
Oh my God.
And with no water, around 75 firefighters in San Antonio left to battle this massive inferno well into Thursday night at this apartment complex in impossible conditions.
Our main concern is water supply. All these hydrants out here are frozen and there's no water.
Firefighters forced to get their water down the street, those unrelenting flames ripping through the building.
Once we make a little bit of advance on the fire, we run out of water.
Officials say the fire was between the second and third floors and before long engulfed the building. Into the parking lot, these cars all catching on fire. Embers surrounding a firefighter as smoke billowed into the sky. Governor Abbott speaking out overnight.
All of us agree on the necessity of action, not just the action taken to restore your power, but to action to ensure that you never have to endure anything like this ever again.
Amid statewide damage and devastation, we are now learning it was almost much worse. ERCOT, the agency responsible for managing 90% of the state's electricity, revealing that the Texas grid was minutes away from catastrophic failure on Sunday.
It was seconds and minutes, given the amount of generation that was coming off the system.
While the state avoided the worst-case scenario, millions of Texans still struggling to keep their families safe, warm, and dry. This mother was forced to burn her toddler's toys to stay warm, while rationing oxygen tanks for her 5-month-old son born with premature lungs. Hannah Griffin, who suffers from interstitial lung disease, needed to ration her oxygen supply for days.
My story did not end in tragedy, but it could have.
As millions finally turned their lights back on, many confronting horrific damage.
It just sounded, like a waterfall hitting.
In Dallas, this man's apartment destroyed when pipes burst in the building.
It just kept getting worse. The wall was just splitting up in two.
And throughout it all, the pandemic rages on. Healthcare workers at Medical City Healthcare going above and beyond.
One of our CEOs picked up 54 colleagues to bring to the hospital in the weather so that they could care for our patients.
And once they arrive, hospitals providing employees with food and a safe place to sleep.
We have 16 hospitals and hundreds of employees and colleagues that are staying in the hospital overnight to be able to be ready to care for patients day and night.
The temperatures later today are expected to get back above freezing for the first time since this past weekend.
They are barely making it through a pandemic, and this week many restaurants had to shut down again. Mary Perez owns Enchiladas Olé in Fort Worth and North Richland Hills.
We were not able to open the North Richland Hills location because they have a water boil ban.
Most water boil orders won't allow restaurants to open because it's not safe. John Bonnell owns several restaurants in Fort Worth.
It comes down to hand washing, things that come through your Coke machine, that's city water supply, iced tea, coffee, anything hooked up to water. Hand washing especially is a big one.
Bonnell says only about 5% of restaurants in the Metroplex were able to open this week. Perez says she's lost a lot of business this week.
Valentine's Day, both locations, and then this whole week that we just opened, a good, easy 75,000, 100,000 between both restaurants.
Because they couldn't open, most restaurants lost their inventory and had to throw away food. Health rules won't allow restaurants to give uncooked food away.
You just can't keep it, so you got to start new when you reopen.
Perez says she was able to open her Fort Worth location today. The water there is fine and the power is on.
Not only are we open for business, but we are also open to serve families and people who have gone without water and food this whole week.
Open and giving away food to those who are suffering more.
We made 1,300 sandwiches for the Presbyterian Night Shelter because those guys had their kitchen down overnight when their power was out for a couple of days.
Most local mom and pop places won't make it through both the pandemic and the brutal winter storm.
Sure. So the way ERCOT works, obviously, it's a complex entity that is a private entity that's in charge of managing power across the state. And we have to rely upon these experts to advise us what must be done. And I want to let you know what these experts told us. They said 5 days before the winter storm hit, ERCOT assured that, quote, we are ready for the cold temperatures coming our way. They also said that ERCOT had issued a notice to power plants to ensure that they were winterized properly. And ERCOT's annual winter assessment, which was designed to ensure the state is prepared, that assessment assured the public of Texas that there would be enough power to meet peak demand this winter. Now, what happened is ERCOT fell short on all three of these promises they made, which is exactly why that I have ordered the state legislature to investigate exactly why ERCOT fell short here and to make sure this never happens again. Listen, we know that you folks at home have faced struggles by going without power. We want to make sure that whatever happened in ERCOT falling short never happens again, even if it means the state stepping up, providing funds to ensure that all of the machinery that froze up and was unable to generate the power you need, that may require funding. The state of Texas should step up and provide that funding.
Welcome back. The winter storm ravaging the South. Texas hit hardest with the frozen tundra, leaving more than 3 million in the state without power. Governor Greg Abbott calling for an investigation into the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, which manages 90% of the Lone Star State's electrical grid. Joining me right now over the phone is live from Houston, Texas, is former Shell Oil President John Hofmeister. John, thanks very much for calling in. You are one of the millions without power this morning. Can you tell us what's happening and how you see it?
Well, my section of Houston has not had power since early Monday morning, about 2 a.m., and it's pretty brutal. It's a very difficult situation. I don't think there needs to be much of an investigation. The answer is very simple. ERCOT, which is the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, simply doesn't plan on this kind of Arctic weather, and so there's a lot of kit, a lot of power generation around the state that's simply sitting idle because it's not winterized for winter operations. It sits there for the summer peak period of air conditioning when it's so hot in Texas. The generators would need to be able to bill the consumer for preparations for winter. Currently, they're not allowed to do that. Under current existing rules and regulations, the generators who would prepare a plant that may not be brought online have no ability to bill the costs of keeping that plant ready to go. That's the problem. It's really about, theoretically, it's protecting the consumer from higher electricity rates, but I think a lot of consumers would rather pay than have no electricity.
Of course. Well, apart from the outages, the weather is also a factor elsewhere. It's affecting gas supply. Gas prices up to $2.54 a gallon nationally. Oil contracts also with their highest prices in more than a year since before the pandemic. John, your reaction to what's happening in oil and gas?
Well, I could watch from my windows in Houston the ship channel where all the refineries and chemical plants are. And on Monday, as power went down, you could see the flares, you could see the smoke. As you know, a refinery is a very carefully balanced kitchen, so to speak. It's heat, it's pressure, and with the frigid cold temperatures, the mechanicals have trouble sometimes. Just the whole operations and keeping it in balance and maintaining safety is a big challenge. So for the sake of safety and security, a lot of the facilities simply had to shut down. We will get past this. It's a bit like a hurricane in the summer. It's a couple of days of disruption. I don't think there's anything permanent here. And the way in which these refineries are shut down, they're always shut down with an eye towards reopening it. So there's no catastrophe. It's just it's an outage. It's inconvenient. It affects prices in the short term. But by this weekend, Maria, we expect 70-degree weather in Houston. So it's going to turn around pretty quickly.
Unbelievable. Do you expect policy to impact any of this? Do you want to see any policy changes as a result of what you're living through?
Yeah, I think deregulation went too far in Texas. This is not the first time this has happened. It happened 10 years ago, and the legislature didn't do any. Find a way to assure the system. They use the word reliability. I wouldn't say what's happening today, reliability. It's really the economics, looking out for the consumer on an ongoing basis. It's been too deregulated, and I think that's the problem. It has to have some central control that enables generators to pay their bills. At the same time, the distributors pay their bills. And I think it's just going to have to be artificially propped up for winter seasons that you can't anticipate in advance.
In Texas, it's a full-on humanitarian crisis.
This is worse than Harvey, and we lost everything.
Some desperate families using outdoor grills inside and running cars in garages to stay warm. Those choices contributing to at least 300 cases of carbon monoxide poisoning in Houston's Harris County, according to the Houston Chronicle.
Very cold, and now we got to deal with this.
This man now homeless after 7 townhomes went up in flames southwest of Dallas during rolling blackouts.
Pretty short on supplies, especially water right now.
With temperatures below freezing, an hour-long wait just to get into this grocery store, Inside, some shelves bare. And at this market, customers waited in the dark.
Yeah?
The Dandridge family has been without heat and lights with their 13-month-old son, Bobby.
All of our camping gear has really been what I've been able to use. And then I've been boiling pots of water. That's, it's kind of steamy in here at this
Kind of survivalist. Trevor Llewellyn's been trying to fix his grandmother's burst pipe, flooding the yard in freezing rain.
We can't get it unstuck, so this water is just coming out, and our water bill is probably going to be outrageous over there.
And this morning, no end in sight.
We're hearing from families.
Driving into the Dorchester neighborhood of Waxahachie, you might as well be in Fargo, North Dakota. Roads and yards still covered in ice and snow, upwards of 200 homes without power since Sunday. And since Sunday on Bent Creek Court, no answers when this will all end.
This situation, in our opinion, is just unacceptable. And there's no communication, no feedback, and we're just sitting here trying to stay warm.
We are getting no answers, no how, no way. And if it's going to be another week, everybody is going to lose everything they have.
Water is the other lingering and escaping problem. The city of Dallas with 3 times as many calls for service for water main breaks like this one in the Oak Lawn neighborhood. At the Mosaic Apartments in uptown Dallas, too much frozen water. A broken water pipe in the parking garage and a car now completely encased in ice. In Fort Worth, a large section of West Montgomery Street put under a boil water advisory. At least 212 confirmed water main breaks citywide, with an estimated 200 more to investigate. Some good news from Crum in far north Denton County.
This is going to end up killing my husband.
That phone call yesterday from Shirley Huddleston, her husband on oxygen, needing to stay warm in their car in the driveway. Today, they finally have power.
We have all kinds of power right now. I mean, we're warm. It's just so distraught because I really thought I was going to lose my husband.
We're worried a little bit.
Back in Waxahachie, where they are still waiting for power, there is a prayer post where people can leave messages for the help they need most.
It's mentally and physically exhausting.
Relief from that exhaustion in the form of electricity and heat is all anyone is praying for here now.